For more than half a century, Harrison Ford has embodied the image of a certain kind of man, stoic yet vulnerable, daring yet private, the reluctant hero whose presence could fill a screen even when he said almost nothing at all. Behind that public image, however, lay a quieter, more human story, one told not through interviews or publicity tours, but through the women who passed through or lingered in his life. This is not a tabloid catalog of affairs or whispered rumors. It is, rather, the story of how 9 remarkable women reflected, challenged, and in subtle ways reshaped the man who became one of Hollywood's last true movie stars. From early encounters that stirred a young actor's ambition to late-life companionship that grounded him after decades of fame, each woman reveals a different Harrison Ford. The dreamer, the professional, the friend, the lover, the husband, and the man still trying to understand what connection truly means. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. 9. Sigourney Weaver, the parallel adventurer. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Hollywood discovered a new kind of heroism. On one side of the screen stood Harrison Ford as Han Solo and Indiana Jones. On the other, Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley. They never shared a film, yet their names became bound together in the imagination of a generation. Directors who worked with both later admitted that there was quiet talk of pairing them, 2 rugged souls whose strength came not from bravado, but endurance. Ford, who admired Weaver's intellectual poise, once remarked that she brought a truth to fantasy. She, in turn, saw in him the rare male actor unafraid of appearing fallible. No romance ever bloomed, but in the long corridors of Hollywood mythology, they remain twin figures, proof that courage could belong to anyone who dared to look fear in the eye. Their unfulfilled collaboration became symbolic of a balance Ford would seek for years, the meeting of equals, where admiration could replace possession. 8. Michelle Pfeiffer, the mirage of perfection. By the mid-1980s, Ford was at the height of his power, a bankable star whose name alone could greenlight a film. Michelle Pfeiffer, meanwhile, was ascending with the same velocity. When the two met during early casting discussions for Working Girl and later at industry gatherings, the chemistry was immediate. Crew members recall an easy laughter between them, a warmth that seemed to light the room. Yet Ford, ever cautious, kept a respectful distance. Pfeiffer was known for guarding her private life with fierce precision, and Ford, twice married and weary of gossip, understood the cost of curiosity. Still, the admiration was genuine. "She's the kind of actor who listens with her whole body," he once said quietly on set. In another life, they might have shared the screen as romantic leads, but timing conspired against them. Instead, they remain 2 professionals linked by a fleeting spark, a what-if that lives on only in the margins of Hollywood history. 7. Helen Mirren, the meeting of empires. When Ford and Helen Mirren finally worked together decades later on the Western series 1923, it felt less like a casting decision and more like the convergence of 2 cinematic empires. Both were veterans, both had outlasted fashion. Mirren's regal composure fascinated Ford. Off camera, he confessed that she possessed the rare mix of wit and gravity. On screen, their intimacy was immediate and unforced, grounded in mutual respect rather than scripted passion. Mirren later laughed in interviews that Ford was a bit of a flirt, gentle, old school, but it's all in the eyes. What audiences witnessed in 1923 was not youthful chemistry, but mature connection, a quiet tenderness that seemed to summarize a lifetime of lessons. After decades of restless searching, Ford found in Mirren a professional mirror, another soul devoted to craft above vanity, truth above rumor. 6. Barbra Streisand, the conversation that never ended. Few pairings could seem more unlikely than Harrison Ford and Barbra Streisand, yet Hollywood thrives on improbable friendships. They met in the early 1990s at a charity gala. Streisand, forever curious, asked him about fear, whether heroes ever felt it. Ford, surprised, answered simply, "All the time." That brief exchange led to hours of conversation. Streisand admired his understatement. Ford admired her fearlessness. There were dinner invitations that came and went, a few phone calls, but no affair. Instead, there was a friendship built on mutual respect for what fame had cost them both. Insiders later whispered that Streisand saw in Ford a serenity she lacked. While he saw in her the creative hunger he sometimes feared he'd lost. Their connection was never romantic, yet it lingered. A reminder that understanding can exist without ownership, and that sometimes the heart is drawn to those who challenge rather than comfort it. 5. Diane Keaton, The Chance Not Taken. In 2010, Ford joined Keaton and Rachel McAdams in the newsroom comedy Morning Glory. The film itself was light, but the relationship between its two veteran leads was anything but trivial. Keaton, renowned for her eccentric brilliance, brought unpredictability to every scene. Ford, disciplined and measured, responded with subtle amusement. "She made me loosen up," he admitted in a rare behind-the-scenes clip. Rumors of flirtations circulated, though both dismissed them kindly. What did exist was admiration, an artist's recognition of another artist's courage to be entirely herself. Keaton's playful irreverence reminded Ford of the spontaneity that first drew him to acting. When the cameras stopped rolling, she teased him about his legendary reserve. He told her that mystery was a kind of armor. Their brief creative partnership became a late-career reminder that even the most seasoned actors can still surprise one another. 4. Carrie Fisher, The Secret Written in a Diary. Among all the women connected to Harrison Ford, none occupies a place as mythic as Carrie Fisher. When Star Wars began in 1976, he was 34, married, and building a career. She was 19, brilliant, irreverent, and lonely in a galaxy that suddenly seemed far too large. Their affair, revealed decades later in Fisher's memoir The Princess Diarist, lasted only 3 months, but its emotional shadow endured for a lifetime. "It was intense," she wrote, "and it was real. But it was also temporary because it had to be." Ford's reaction when the book was published was characteristic, quiet, dignified, without public complaint. Privately, friends said he was moved and a little haunted. Fisher's honesty forced him to confront a version of himself he rarely acknowledged, the man behind the hero. Their bond, tender, flawed, and deeply human, remains one of Hollywood's most poignant intersections of fiction and reality. Han Solo and Princess Leia will live forever on screen, but it is the young man and woman behind the costumes who remind us how fragile even legendary hearts can be. 3. Melissa Matheson, the writer who knew his silence. If Carrie Fisher revealed Ford's secret passion, Melissa Matheson revealed his depth. The acclaimed screenwriter of E.T. and The Black Stallion met Ford in the late 1970s when both were still climbing. They married in 1983, and for 2 decades, theirs was one of Hollywood's most admired unions, creative, private, and sustained by mutual respect. Matheson understood Ford's silences. "He doesn't waste words," she told a friend, "but when he speaks, you listen." Their marriage weathered fame's storms longer than most, producing 2 children and a sense of stability he had never known. Yet, as careers diverged and absences grew, cracks appeared. They separated in 2000 and finalized divorce in 2004. When Matheson died of cancer in 2015, Ford spoke of her with quiet grief. She was a kind spirit, a great writer, and she made things better. She had given him something few others could, a home inside the whirlwind. Her influence lingered in his later roles, where vulnerability replaced swagger and silence spoke volumes. 2. Callista Flockhart, The Anchor in the Storm. In 2002, at the Golden Globes, a spill of red wine changed Harrison Ford's life. Callista Flockhart, then the star of Ally McBeal, accidentally knocked her drink into his lap. Embarrassment turned to laughter, laughter to conversation, and conversation to love. Few believed the relationship would last. He was 60, she was 38. But behind the headlines, a quiet partnership took shape, one defined not by glamour but by constancy. Ford admired her devotion to her adopted son, Liam. She admired his humility despite legend status. In 2010, they married, choosing simplicity over spectacle. Friends say Callista reintroduced him to domestic peace. The man who had spent decades running from one film set to another learned to sit still, to cook, to fly his plane for pleasure rather than escape. In interviews, he calls her a remarkable woman, his tone softening in a way that words alone cannot capture. After years of cinematic adventure, Ford had finally found his landing strip. 1. The idea of connection, what it all reveals. Behind every name and headline, behind every rumor and confession, lies the same unanswerable question. What does a man like Harrison Ford seek in love? Looking back across these 9 chapters, a pattern emerges. He is drawn not to ornament but to authenticity, to women whose strength equals his own. He gravitates toward intelligence, resilience, and a touch of mystery. The same qualities that define the characters he plays. In a career built on saving worlds, he has always looked for someone who could save him from the weight of them. Sigourney Weaver reflected his adventurous spirit. Michelle Pfeiffer mirrored the elegance he admired. Helen Mirren matched his maturity. Barbra Streisand engaged his intellect. Diane Keaton rekindled his spontaneity. Carrie Fisher awakened his vulnerability. Melissa Matheson offered sanctuary. Callista Flockhart gave him peace. Each, in her own way, reminded him that even heroes are human, that courage is not found only in daring escapes or bullwhip cracks, but in the quiet endurance of the heart. Today, at an age when most actors have retreated from the spotlight, Harrison Ford continues to work, not for fame, but for the simple satisfaction of storytelling. On film sets, he moves with the same deliberate focus that has always defined him. Off-set, he prefers the silence of the skies above Wyoming, piloting his plane through open air where no camera follows. Those who know him say that the years have softened but not diminished him. The edges remain, the dry humor, the guarded privacy, but beneath them is gratitude. In interviews, he deflects questions about legacy, yet when pressed about love, he offers a small smile and answers, "I've been lucky,